work in a very, regulate manner. So now, when we talk about such things, when we talk about issues, so one of the important issue is gender issues. And today, the ma'am is going to give some insight about that. And I'm very hopeful that whatever session is going to be there for the next 1 or 1.5 hour, it will be very fruitful. And definitely at the end of the session, we all are going to take something from here, and definitely we are going to follow in our life as well. So again, once again, I would like to say welcome to our dignitary madam, that she has vast of knowledge, and definitely whatever she is going to tell us today, it is going to be very fruitful, and we all going to take something from here. Over to you, Niro sir.
Yeah. So, very good afternoon to all the participants at the state level, at the national level. I'm Mr. Nirav Goda, the coordinator of Department of Banking and Insurance. Today, I take this task of introducing our guest of honor and a speaker. It's a great privilege. She has been inspiration to everyone because not only that she is hardworking and dedicated to her job, but also because of her passion. Today, she will share with us the thoughts, ideas, and experience on the topic of gender sensitization. I welcome Professor Vibhuti Patel, ma'am, superannuated from TISS Mumbai on 30th June 2020. She worked at Advanced Center for Women Studies, School of Development Studies, TISS, that is Tata Institute of Social Science, after her superannuation from SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. Professor Vibhuti Patel is a PhD in economics from University of Mumbai. She was awarded as a visiting fellowship to the London School of Economics and Political Science from Association of Commonwealth University, UK, United Kingdom in 1992-93. She has authored and co-authored 12 books and contributed over 100 papers as a chapter in various books edited by others. For EPG Pathshala, that is UGC Delhi, she has been a paper coordinator for women and economics. She has received many awards and she has received citation from Mahila Sangha Bans Association. She has been awarded for social sector work from the Mayor of Mumbai, that is BMC, Outstanding Citizenship Award by Women Political Forum on Maharashtra Stree Mukti Din, award from Women's Achiever from Young Environmental Program Trust Mumbai, and many more. She is a member of editorial board of International Journal of Economics, Education and Development, Switzerland, Bharatiya Samajik Chintan Indian Academy of Social Science, Allahabad, and many more. She prepared base paper on gender for Mumbai Human Development Report and MMRD for Government of Maharashtra. She is a member of expert committee of the working group on discrimination against women and girls of United Nations Human Rights Council. Ma'am has also contributed to prepare a report on women's human right in changing world of work 2020. I end up here with a beautiful quote that it is a time that we all see a gender as a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals. Over to you, ma'am. Please have a podium of you.
Yeah.
And let us start with a beautiful session, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Professor Nirav Goda,
Yeah.
and for your persistent effort for getting me for this today's event. And I feel really privileged that I am addressing students of commerce management and varied discipline of Thakur College. Professor, along with them, Professor Ila Gaglani, Principal Sir, Professor Manoj Mishra, Professor Nishikant, all of you have made great effort, and I can see the participation in a great number for today's today's function. I would like to share my PPT. Gender responsive budgeting is a buzzword currently. And first of all, before that, I would like to tell you about the why are we commemorating March 8, International Women's Day. It was in 1910 that for the first time in human history, women from Chicago, the working class women who had to slog for slog it out for 16 hours a day. They demanded 8 hours of work, humane condition of work, daycare center for children, and they, for the first time, they came together and showed the strength, woman power. And they had to face a lot of opposition. They had to face a lot of uh, retrenchment, and they had to face a lot of victimization. But they opened the door for human civilization. So let us not forget our foremothers, because of whose effort that currently we have this formula of 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of sleep. So that is the humanization of the work process it has done. And in memory of their sacrifice, in memory of their collective effort, because for the first time in human history, women came together, because otherwise women are confined to home, they are separated, but they came together. So to respect their dedication, to respect their sacrifice, we are commemorating March 8, International Women's Year. And we don't call it celebration. The consumerist society calls it celebration. We call it commemoration. We are respecting their effort, and currently we are enjoying this. And I congratulate Professor Nirav Goda to kickstart the whole commemoration of Women's Day with 1st of March, like generally for 10 days from 1st March to 10th March, so many conferences and webinars and seminars are organized on women's question. And as you said, the gender is a spectrum. Okay, so we don't see gender only as a binary. And when we talk about the gender responsive budgeting, you being a student of commerce management, this thing, you must be knowing what the budget is, because everyone makes budget, whether you have a farm or even in your house, how homemaker has to make budget. Okay, then every institution makes budget. But when we talk about gender responsive budget, we are talking about to raise citizens' awareness on gender. So, what are the gender relations? Why we have the gender relations which are unequal in today's context? Because we are not talking of only man and women, man, women, transgender. Why different kind of a status is enjoyed by different genders? And how does our government budget, and especially the social sector budget, government's expenditure on health, education, skill development, employment program, welfare services, impacts men, women, transgender community differentially, that we need to see? And how can we make this budget more gender responsive? Okay, so to change the budgets and the policies to promote gender equality, that is a very important mission of gender budgeting. And to make governments accountable for gender equality through budgetary commitments, that whatever commitments of women empowerment, gender equality, equity, gender mainstreaming you are talking about, you have to translate them into financial commitment. Because in a market society, any demand, any dream, any aspiration, any mission, without support of money you can't execute it. So it's very important. Even for today's program, unless there is a funds, functions, and uh, functionaries were allocated by your college, you would not have been able to organize this webinar. So it is a simply, if we see, gender responsive budgeting is a tool of gender mainstreaming. So bringing the gender concerns in the process of budget making. So stage one is analyzing the budget from the gender perspective to determine differential impact of budget on women and men. Like you may talk about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, all of us are paying 2% professional tax at source. Okay, anybody who is working in India, when the paycheck is given, 2% is already deducted at source to sponsor Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. But if we just see Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we saw initial years everywhere, because Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan is a heavily funded scheme. Okay, there is a lot of money. But we saw in so many areas, all boys were in the school and their sisters had become child labor. Okay. So when we are talking about any of this scheme, we have to specially target. We have to ask the schools, we have to ask the education department, why there are only boys in the school? Where are the girls gone? Why aren't they entering the school? What are the hurdles? And then you use the budget to stop these hurdles and to prevent these hurdles. When we did a study for UNICEF, 8 state governments and government of India on childcare as an essential input for women's development, we found out that even in city like Bombay, so many girls, this was the study done in 1980s, 88. And we found out that so many girls did not go to school because they had to look after younger brothers and sisters. Both the parents were, they were poor, from poor family, both the parents were working, and they were leaving the elder sister to look after younger brothers. And when we said that, when we got, our research showed that this is the reason there is such a small percentage of girls in school, we immediately suggested to Bombay Municipal Corporation that why don't you convert one room in a school building into a crash? This girl will come with her younger brother and sister, leave them in the crash during the small recess and big recess. She can go and check the brother siblings. Plus, don't make her bring uniform, bring school bag. Give them locker in the room. They will keep their school bag in the locker so that they can carry the baby, but they don't have to carry books also. And after going, like we saw their homes, there was hardly any environment for studies. So we also suggested that increase 1 hour more in school so that they can finish their homework. So when, because well, as soon as they reach home, they'll have to do housework. Now this is called sensitivity. You don't need extra money for that. What you need is a sensitivity according to specific circumstances. There is an organization in Mumbai where they are working with the sugarcane farmers who are in Maharashtra for 4 months during monsoon. They are here. Remaining 8 months, they are the migrant workers who go to Gujarat and other sugar field where they get job. So they created and their children were not getting any, both boys and girls were deprived of education because of the parents were shifting from one state to other state. Then the new scheme that came, they suggested that why don't you have a moving school for 4 months. The teacher will remain in Maharashtra, and the same teacher will go along with all these workers to Gujarat. And two state governments, they talked to each other and they said, okay, they'll be providing a school building, school room in a school for the sugarcane workers' children. So this is called sensitivity. How resources are there, funds are there, functionaries are there, teachers are there, but to be sensitive to the specific demands of the people who are the ones who are deprived. Stage two of gender budgeting is reformulating budgetary policies and the distribution of resources to achieve gender equal outcomes. For example, in 1991, government of Maharashtra decided that we adopted new economic policy. Okay, they also said that now on sugar, on ration, on the PDS, public distribution system, sugar will not be given. Sugar were diverted at that time. Sugar was diverted. So, Maharashtra is the largest producer of sugar. Was diverted for production of around 200 types of alcoholic beverages: cognac, whiskey, beer, rum, all this. And once the so much of alcohol was produced, you have to sell it. There is no international market. International market is saturated with alcohol. Most of the European and industrialized countries, they don't drink like fish. They have become very health conscious. So there is no global market. So how do you create market within the state, or you create a domestic market? And one of the ways of increasing the sale of alcohol was considered to be attracting tourists. And tourists, so within 10 years of time, from 1991 to 2001, we had 94,000 young girls in Maharashtra who were dancing in the bar. So you first of all, suddenly all the bars start, every street you and every suburb you had bars, and in that bar, young girl would be dancing to Bollywood number. Now, in 1994, we had Panchayati Raj Act. 33% of women in urban and rural panchayat institutions, that means municipal corporation, municipal council, Gram Sabha, Jilla Panchayat, women were elected. And these women were questioned by women of the villages and women from poverty groups that what are you doing with our daughters? Our daughters should be educated. Our daughters should be become an Anganwadi worker. They should become teacher. They should become doctor. They should become nurse. And instead, our girls are dropping out of 7th and 8th standard and dancing in the bar. We will not allow that. So what did they do? These elected representatives, they pressurized the government, Home Minister of Maharashtra, to ban bar dancing. No dancing in the bar by girls. All these girls should be in the school, not dancing in the bar in front of alcoholics whole night. And next day she would be just sleeping and dozing in the class. No, so that is also possible. When women get united, when you become gender sensitive, you reformulate the budgetary policies. And they also insisted that sugar should be given in ration shop. Well, our children at the time of Ganpati, at the time of Diwali, Why can't they get sugar at a affordable price through PDS instead of using this sugar or using all the fruits in Maharashtra, including grapes and everything, just to make alcohol? Why don't we allow people to have and poor children to have these fruits? Stage three of gender budgeting is that working systematically to enable gender within all budgetary processes. So, all budgetary processes, right from the policy making, that means in an economic survey, yeah, there should be gender concerns. You must have seen economic survey of 2019, 18 and 19, where even major statement is of gender equality. Once you are clear in your policy, once your vision is clear, it also percolate down to schemes, programs, and you are now you. Once you get your degree, you will get your BCom, MCom, MBA, BBA, what you will be placed wherever you go. You have to see the budget of that institution, whether it is an industry or whether it is a service, whether it is a government department, whether it is a school or whether it is a university or college. You have to see budget from gender ka chashma. You have to see it from the lens of gender. How is it going to impact? For example, UGC asked me to prepare a report on 8 schemes which UGC had started for empowerment of women in the university system. Those 8 schemes are women's hostel, crash, because not so many colleges and universities don't even apply. That money is there, the money had remained unutilized. Those 8 schemes which UGC had given under 12th 5-year plan, most of the fund was remained unutilized because nobody has sent proposal, because that kind of gender sensitivity was not there. Very few universities, very few colleges had asked for funds. So there were schemes like women's hostel, gymkhana for girls, daycare center for children. Now, daycare center in India, only TISSS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, have daycare center within the institute in Devdar. And students, if they are married and they have children, teachers, staff, anybody's child can be looked after in the crash. So that scheme was there. There was a scheme for women development cell. You could have, people could send proposal for WDC, so that such program which can be organized, gender sensitization program could be organized. There was scheme for a single daughter in a family, so that is called a scholarship scheme. So state would look after her education if any family had only one daughter. That scheme was there. And there were schemes for special research projects on this thing. But nobody uses it. So it is very important that you, at a policy level, at a formulation of schemes and programs, and also implementation level, people know about it. So you have to have educational program. Why should there be the enthusiasm in which with which we have advertisements on HIV/AIDS or population control? Why can't we have same enthusiasm for developmental scheme for women? Because so many schemes are there, but people are not sending proposal. So first step is identification of gender issues in the sector. For example, we have a declining sex ratio. Okay, there is a deficit of girls and women in the population because of the abuse of ultrasound machine and sex selective abortion of female fetus. So, this is the very important issue. It is a national emergency because continuously, right from 1891 to 2021, there is a continuous decline of women and girls from the population. So, what you have a big scheme called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. And Kolhapur University in Ahmedabad, in Maharashtra, has a massive campaign on Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So similarly, the second step is that of a baseline. You have to collect information, gender-based information in all developmental areas. What is the educational enrollment of girls and boys and transgender population in the school? Are they continuing their education, or they are dropping out after fifth standard? What are the reasons they are dropping out after fifth standard? Isn't there any school in the village? Parents are scared of sending child. Boy may be sent to other village, but woman will not be sent to other village. There may be social stigma against transgender child wants to study, but the teacher and everyone has society has a stigma, even the family has a stigma, that child is just thrown out, abandoned by the child. So this baseline information in each and every area, whether it is education, whether it is a health, currently like health data, the Ministry of Health has said that they have data only of 24% of pregnant women and 17% of children who have been born during corona pandemic lockdown. Okay, so it's going to create massive problem, because what about the pulse polio of these children? What about the vaccination of these children? How many women have died because the corona ward were, with all the maternity ward were converted into corona ward? So this baseline data is very important to target your budget in a most efficient way. Step 3 is conducting gender analysis of the activities, that whatever activities are happening, you have to see whether it creates a enabling environment or disabling environment. If there is a disabling environment, then because of that there is a non-utilized. For example, in the year 2000, there was a Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. 9 lakh devotees visited that Mela. When the Mela got over, Kumbh Mela got over, there were 65,000 women languishing in Allahabad, in Prayagraj, at the bank of Ganga Ghat, at the steps of different temples. They were begging, some of them were hungry, some of them had torn clothes, some of them were they had lost their, they did not know what was happening around them. It was so difficult for Allahabad police to understand why so many women are just left behind. And they asked these women where were they from which village they had come, from which state they had come. Many of them had could not even tell. But those who could tell the address of their village, police, when they went there, family members said, we don't want her. And all these women were 45 plus. They were aging women who had given 30, 20, 25 years of their life for homemaking. These were the abandoned women. They were abandoned by their own children. They were abandoned by their own family members, husband who had taken a younger woman as a wife. And Allahabad police approached Prime Minister's office, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and I said that what can we do? This is a very sad scenario. And then the new scheme, Government of India came up with a scheme called Swadhar. Those who are not looked after by the family, state would look after. It's a duty of the country to look after. And the Swadhar scheme was declared in 2001, which was declared as a women empowerment year for our country. India declared it as a women empowerment year. And the approach was womb to tomb. When the child is in the mother's tummy, till the child, the person dies, state, there is a whole empowerment process in which the budget and gender budget plays very important role in this process. And in this scheme, what was found that the scheme was written in such a way which said that if you own land, state government will give you fund to erect a building, or if you own building, then you can start the shelter home for women in difficult circumstances. Now, most of the women's organization, most of people like you and me, we don't have land, we don't have big building. It was the pimps and procurers and kothewalis. They had homes. Because they were doing their business of prostitution. They got the money because they sent the proposal asking for Swadhar scheme, and they used this scheme in so many places. This scheme was used for running a prostitution den. So women who are abandoned, women who are thrown out by their family, they were given shelter, but they were made to do such wrong things. And then the in the impact analysis, in the budget, in the analysis, it came out when the researchers, they found out and they said, oh my God, this is what is happening. Immediately they had to change the design of the scheme, and they said that those who are uh, who don't have their own building, they can rent a building and also run the women the shelter home, and there should be complete 360-degree KYC. So what is the credibility of this institution? That is very important. The same thing happened about the working women's hostel, because we needed, like that was the time where we saw after 91, so increasing number of educated women entering into service sector, and they were then away from their home, okay, not from their own native place, but they would be working anywhere in India. And we needed more and more working women's hostel, not only in the big cities, but also in a tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So it is very important. All these three stages are very important. So conducting gender analysis of the related budget, and also developing objectives and recommendation for equality. So you have to continuously review whether your money is used in a judicious way, in an efficient way, and whether the main aim and the mission of the budgetary provision has been fulfilled. Now we all know that budget represents the financial plan, and hence it is the most significant policy instrument of the government for establishing macroeconomic stability, financial efficiency, strategic priorities, and more importantly, ensuring equitable distribution of resources of the country. Simply put, it is a policy tool for the government to translate government's objectives into the program and services to achieve socio-economic development of the country. That means 50% of the population, that is women, in our country it is a 48% of population, and the population of transgender people. You can't leave them out of development process or for any country's development. When all citizens of the country they contribute, then the nation can have double digit growth. So we need to understand the budget classification system. First of all, it provides the normative framework for both policy decision making as well as the accountability, because the way it is a taxpayer's money, you are accountable how you use that money. Classifying expenditure and revenues correctly is very important for policy formulation and performance analysis, and also allocating resources efficiently among sectors and ensuring compliance with the budgetary resources approved by the legislature. Whatever budget you are making, if it is a budget for municipal corporation, it has to be passed in the corporate by the corporate. If it is a state budget, then it has to be passed by the legislative assembly. If it is a union budget, it has to be passed by the parliament of the India. So, and also you need to provide the day-to-day administration of the budget. That means whatever expenditure and whatever income you have in any department, any ministry, you have to do the uh, bank justification. And by evening, you have to do the jamabandi, you have to tell. So that is very important. And that is the demand of transparency. Now, when we talk about the gender responsive budgeting, are we asking for separate budget? No, we are not asking for separate budget. Only thing we are dissecting the government budget to establish is gender differential impact and to translate gender commitments into budgetary commitments. That means gender budgeting is concerned with one, use of public economics to reduce gender gaps in which are the areas where you have a major gender gap. We have a gender gap in education. Okay, 82% of men in our country are literate, while you have 65% of women who are literate. Health, this thing, we have extremely major challenge, that is extremely high maternal mortality, extremely high child mortality. We have a malnutrition and morbidity is very high among women as compared to men. Health seeking behavior also, in that we see very limited health services reaching women. Even the reproductive health issues, we have reproductive health, these are the major challenges. When it comes to food security also, we see the different. Indian women eat last, least, and leftover. Okay, that is the cultural practice. You first eat, first you feed the kamane wale ghar ke aadmi ko khilaoge, then you will feed your in-laws and elders, and women would be eating the last. So that is a major reason, because uh, some 1972, when the Status of Women's Committee report was prepared, 85% of Indian women had anemia, iron deficiency, calcium deficiency. Now, the latest report this month, which came out, is National Family Health Survey Round 5. That shows 65% of Indian women. That means two-thirds of Indian women are anemic. Even if you do the survey in your college, you would find that so many of women in your college, even from the middle class, okay, they have, when in SNDT, when we did the study and student welfare, 40% of our girls were anemic. They were not even eligible for blood donation because their HB hemoglobin count was late. So there is a very important concern. And this is very specific to South Asia and mainly India, because it's a cultural norm. It's not only poverty which makes you malnourished. Africa is poorer than us, but still this level of malnutrition, they have been, it's not there. At least after Millennium Development Goal from 2000 to 2015, they have addressed, because they created soup kitchens, state-supported soup kitchens, where anyone who is hungry just would go and eat there. No, so those kind of budgetary provision they made. Another very thing is the safety, very important, because currently, if you see, after Nirbhaya tragedy, where a young physiotherapist was gang raped by 6 men in a moving bus at 9:30. After that, we have seen massive pulling out of women from all sectors. Earlier, parents would send, in-laws would send, that they would not object to women working away from their home, like in any other city. But after 2013, we have seen drastic decline. If you see the ILO data, there is a drastic decline from 34% of women in the workforce to 27%. And currently under Corona, it is 24%. So losing out the talent. At one level, UGC says lakhs of Indian women are now entering university. So they are degree holders. They have degrees. 40% of women with MBA degree are not working. Okay. So it is safety is a very important concern. And currently, like Disha is a one very important project UNDP did, where it targeted 15,000 girls from Maharashtra for intensive skill education, Skill India. And even after that, 5 years of training, they are saying that in the employment market, they are not getting level playing field. The major hurdle is a mobility from home to workplace, the street harassment, traveling, the insecurity of traveling, that is one which prevents them, though they have degree, though they have skill there. So safety is a very important. So how to create the safe ecosystem, both at the workplace, while traveling, in the community becomes very important concern. And that's why we have 1,000 crore allocated to Nirbhaya Fund, which is not utilized. That's another issue. Only 4 or 5 states are utilizing it. 40%, 30% of the money they are not. So that means money is not a problem. Vision is a problem. Analysis is a problem. What should you focus in your proposal from the union government? That is a problem. And the state governments, if the people in Mantralaya, people in Sachivalaya, if they are also not sensitive, they will not even send the proposal to union government for the money, okay? Because it's a centrally sponsored scheme, like 70% is given by union government, 30% state has to give the matching grant. So the identification of gender gaps. Second one is a reprioritization of public spending. If you think that the public spending is going in a wrong direction, that's what happened in Goa. And the chief minister of Goa says that we are inviting 200 varieties of alcoholic beverages to invest in Goa. And Goa is the best place, but Goa is westernized. Goan women are very good at dancing. The Goa has a carnival. We can commercialize carnival. We can have so many casinos in Goa. And women's organization, they completely oppose. When the IDBI director rejected proposals for economic empowerment of women who were victim of violence, domestic violence, and who were thrown out by their family. The IDBI director says that no, we don't want. Why do you want SHG? Why do you want self-help group? Why do you want to do the cashew processing industry or come up with a sweet meat shop or just do some other economic activity? We will train them to become bartender because we will give money for five-star hotels, and these women can be trained to manage the hotel. They can be bartender, and it enriched the women's organization. And this is what are you talking. There was a big protest against IDBI. In fact, they invited me when the budget was presented to go and assembly as an observer, that what was. And then immediately they had a press conference. They said, we don't want Goa to become a casino capital. We want Goa to develop with genuine real economy. Goa has a very good agriculture. Goa has a cashew production. Goa produces coconut. Goa has a huge sea beach, so we can have a fish processing industry, sea product. This is the real economic development. So they demanded that you can't use taxpayers' money for alcohol industry. We don't want 200. Just all Goans, they have to drink like fish. And they said that Goa can become a tourist destination with so many cases of child sexual abuse. They said, we don't want this kind of unregulated tourism. Tourism has to be regulated. They can't destroy Goa's environment. It's a small. So that is possible. In Punjab, when the women elected representatives in panchayat, they came to know that there was a, though Punjab produces massive amount of wheat, best quality wheat in our country. And there was shortage of wheat in PDS shop, ration shop palas. They said, no, there is no PDS. And they came to know that wheat, which was in FCI Godan, was diverted for production of beer. These women, they got together and they completed, they filed public interest litigation. They contacted civil liberties organization. They said, how can you divert food grain which is meant for people eating for production of beer. And as it is in Punjab, every 2 kilometers there used to be a alcohol shop on the way, and it created so many road accidents. It destroyed the lives of youth in Punjab. And these women, they say that all these alcohol shops should be converted into shops of fruit juice, because Punjab had so many fruits. They have apple and their strawberry. So many fruits are there. They said, oh, they can. We don't want them to become unemployed. Instead of selling alcohol, you sell fruit juice. No, so we have seen such kind of a reprioritizer in Maharashtra. We saw that we have so many all women panchayat, no, because even on the open seat, women have been elected because they are so judicious, they are non-corrupt, they don't demand komedi, they don't demand daru, they don't allow child labor. So sometimes, so many times, even in the open seat, women have been elected. And these women, they demanded from the government that if we don't want secret ballot on daru, because we want raising of hands in panchayat meeting. If 50% of the villages, uh, women in Gram Sabha, they attend Gram Sabha and they raise their hand and say, we don't want alcohol shop, that village should be declared as a Daru Mukta village, and no license should be given for a liquor shop. So we have seen how when women get united, when women get become conscious on gender issues, the women get become sensitive to developmental concerns of the village, they reprioritize public fund. Panchayat fund cannot be used for that. Panchayat fund will be used for construction of road, construction of, even in that, the man in the family would say that road should be connected to mall, road should be connected to cineplex, this thing, so that youth would want, they would want to go and watch movie. Women would say no, same road from PWD should be connected to hospital and connected to school, so that children from this, so that the state transport bus can come to the village, children can go by village, they don't have to cross jungle where they can be attacked. So the priority in the funding also becomes a very important, and where women have gender sensitivity is there, the prioritization, reprioritization takes place. Transparency and accountability for revenue generation. In so many countries in Asia, earlier, if you see the 80s, if you read, so many countries after countries, they would just give a budget for only creating infrastructure for tourism. And they would want tourists from Europe and America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand to visit their country to get foreign exchange. And for that, they would use women's bodies. And that was opposed. And then the women, they said that nothing, we will not allow. We want our country should have more GDP. Gross domestic product of the country should increase. But that should increase on the basis of a real economy, not such bubble of sex shop. So it is a brothel model of production we don't want. We want an actual growth of agriculture, actual growth of industry, actual growth of trade. And that is the way we want to generate revenue, not by selling women's bodies of our country. Okay. And they change. Right? So now you can see so many countries where this kind of approach towards earning foreign exchange through tourism, that is, by hooks and crooks, that is gone. So, and the public expenditure in a real economy and in a direction in which none of the gender concerns are compromised, that is there. Another very important thing is lifting the veil of statistical invisibility of unpaid care economy. You must have known that during the pandemic also, the most debated issue is the care economy. Okay, because so much of work, cooking, cleaning, carrying, our sisters in the village, they are doing collection of fuel, fodder, water, animal care, kitchen gardening. All this is not recognized, not acknowledged, not rewarded. It is unpaid work. But this, without this care economy, the mainstream economy cannot function. It plays a pivotal role. It's very important. And we have to accept. And that's why if you see the gender budget statement, which was prepared by National Institute of Public Finance and Policy Making, in the introduction itself, it says that we acknowledge the contribution of Indian women in care economy. By the time they come for a wage economy or by the mainstream of the economy, they are already exhausted because they have already done cooking, cleaning, carrying, animal care, collection of fuel, fodder, water. So that is very important. And once you acknowledge that women are not a sponge on the economy, They are not they are not freebies. They are not getting freebies. They have really contributed to care economy, and that and then your attitude towards investment in women for economic development will also change. Equality dimension, that if there is a constitutional equality, article 14, 15, 16 are giving equality. If it is equality on paper, to make it as a substantive equality, that you need gender responsive budgeting, and also the efficiency dimension, that no economy can come up. If you read the report, like latest report on World Economic Forum, it also shows that the countries in which work participation of women, integration of women in the development process is high, like 65%, 55%, 70%. These are the countries which have double digit growth. So the countries of South Asia, and especially India and Pakistan, these are the only two countries which have very, very low work participation of women, though they have educated women. But if their education and training doesn't translate into formal economic contribution. So we need to create an ecosystem which will enable women to make productive contributions. So even from the point of view of equality and both efficiency dimension, it is very important to have gender responsive budgeting. And that's why we have to transform the macroeconomic policies. Investment in education, investment in health, investment in skill development. Why in Stand Up India, Startup India, Make in India, and Skill India, we are not integrating women even after being training? Why industrial training institutes? We have 400 industrial training institutes which provide more than 120, 130 courses. Why do we give only two courses to women, tailoring and screen printing? Screen printing is even redundant after computer. It's only tailoring. And we don't even give them this kind of opportunity. Even four certain states started giving skill training to women only when there was a tremendous shortage of skilled labor, because most of the men had gone to Gulf countries from Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. It is at that stage that in state government, so many industrial training institutes started training women how to maintain petrol pump, how to do turner, fitter, electrician, this kind of thing, because every economy, the local economy wants it. So we need to change the macroeconomic policies to ensure gender justice, social justice, those who are from the weaker section, those who are marginalized, SC, ST, OBC, minorities, very important, and also distributive justice. And that is the promise our country has made under Millennium Development Goal, which were from 2000 to 2050, and Sustainable Development Goal, which are from 2015 to 2030. Now, once you have a uh, commitment to gender responsive budgeting, first step is analyzing situation of women, men, girls, boys, transgender population with regard to educational status, nutritional status, health status, employment status, status in skills, safety, transport, and sports. Like our sports budget, our sports budget is completely skewed in favor of boys. Unit cost for sports budget, per one sports student, we are spending 200 rupees. How much are we spending for girls? 12 rupees. All these girls who got us award in Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games and Asian Games, it is their parents, their family members who invested in them. Okay, there are cases where in Haryana and all, where they sold off land to train the girl to have a special kind of diet. She has to have a lot of ghee. She has to have a lot of practice. She has to do. She has to do get special type of training and costume and shoes and all. Everything their individual parents have spent. But this from the taxpayers' money, the budget is directly. So whatever sports complex you have, or a sports training gymkhana, hostel facility, transport budget, everything is in favored by women. Even when women have women sports women, like those who have got the bronze medal and silver medal and gold medal at a interstate competition and all, when they stay in the hostel, they are made to do only cleaning of the campus and cooking and all that. They are not even given playground for practicing. Okay, what you saw in Chak De India, same kind of a situation is existing. This thing. So sensitivity of each and every ministry becomes very important. No ministry can say we have nothing to do with gender. Home ministry can't say, oh, we are only concerned about law and order. Gender-based violence is increasing. It is increasing by slips and bounds. Child sexual abuse is increasing. Attacks and murder of single women, senior citizens. Yesterday also one lady was killed, a 77-year-old. Today also in another suburb, one this in Kalyan somebody is killed. So single. So what kind? How can you say that you have nothing to do with gender? It's very important that each and every department in the ministry at all level, local, state, and national level, becomes gender sensitized, and they start responding to the kind of situation which is there through gender. So assessing the budget allocation, because if you want to have any scheme, take one example of protection of women from domestic violence act. If NFHS report, latest report round 5 up to conducted in 2019 says that 45% of Indian women face domestic violence. United Nations has said that the corona is a pandemic, health pandemic, but you have a shadow pandemic of violence against women. Now, if your budget you have allocated for this budget, you have to this particular law. If you want to implement, there are 5 service providers: hospital, counselor, protection officer, police, and shelter home if she's thrown out of house. Okay. Now, how much money you would know? So you will have to prepare a realistic proposal for the one-stop crisis center. Under the COVID pandemic, Bombay City created one-stop crisis center in 13 hospitals from Kolaba to Virar. Okay, whichever BMC hospitals are there. 13 centers were created. Everywhere the advertisements in newspapers and WhatsApp group and social media were given that these are the helpline numbers and these are mobile numbers. So any time of the day you can or night you can use it. And these women, when they are in difficulty, they can be taken to one stop crisis means that you don't have to run from pillar to post. You just reach the casualty ward of that hospital. Police will come to you, lawyer will come to you, shelter home people will come to you, counselor will come to you, protection officer will come to you, and the medical aid, because you have faced violence. First thing you need is a medical aid. Okay, and so it is called one stop crisis center. Now once you create these 13 one-stop crisis centers within the city of Mumbai, then you have to come up with the budgetary allocation, that how much budget Baba Hospital will need, how much budget Bhagwati Hospital will need. You have to do that. So that, and monitoring the spending, and service delivery, that what kind of expenditure you will have to have. And we say that when it comes to violence against women, you should keep emergency fund, because I remember initially when the one stop crisis center was started, the social workers were so much harassed. Why you spend one 18 rupees on dosa? Why you spend 200 rupees on a nightgown or a maxi or a salwar kameez? Now this woman had a torn clothes. The counselor, when she came to one stop crisis center, so immediately what was needed was uh, clothes for her. Or she was so hungry that she had to be fed. The baby was so hungry that they had to arrange for milk. So we said that these are the kind of a petty cash which should be given to each one-stop crisis center, and it should be the discretion of the counselor that can use it. So you have to even design. Everything has to be written because it's a public funding. Monitoring the spending and also service delivery, that no one should embezzle. We know what happened in one district of Maharashtra, where they showed complete 100% utilization of MG Narega fund. Dr. IAS officer Manisha Verma, she went on a inspection and she said, how come this particular district has completely spent the money because it's money is for the whole year. And she checked with the villagers that did they work for Narega. They said no, none, they had not worked. And she tallied the name of people who had received 100 days of wages, and none of these people were there in the village. And then she also demanded the list of all the population of that village and along with the dead people, and realized that all these people whose names were listed in the MG Narega scheme, they all were dead people. They had taken the names from Smashan Ghar. Okay, the record of those whose funeral rites were done, they were there, and she unearthed this big scam, and she got a punishment posting. She was shifted to tribal welfare department as a punishment posting, but she there also she did excellent job. And then she was in charge of RUSA, Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan for government of Maharashtra. So this is also monitoring and service delivery are very important, and assessing the outcomes. If you are investing in education, has literacy rate gone up? If you are investing in the very in ICDS, Integrated Child Development Program, has the nutrition standard of pregnant women and children gone up? So outcomes are very important, not only outlay which is made in the budget whenever the budget is presented in parliament or legislative assembly, but what has been the, has this money really brought in positive result, positive externality, or it is like a pouring water on sand. If you pour water, reti pe ya balu pe pani daloge, kuch nahi milega. So that should not happen. Now, most of the schemes within the gender responsiveness comes under protective and welfare scheme, that means pension for widow and destitute, budget for shelter homes, rehabilitation centers for women survivor of violence, and also second one is the social services where budgetary provision for education, health, crash, working women's hostel, Ujwala scheme, it is for the fuel because women get gas cylinder, fodder for animals, water, drinking water, so important. Housing, we have Indira Awas Yojana, and now we are talking after the whole crisis of migrants where people were walking for miles together to reach their home because they had no money to pay the rent after lockdown because they had lost their job. Now we are talking about the urban housing scheme by the state, because this kind of tragedy happened only in India. It did not happen in any other country because they had urban, the people were not thrown out because they could not pay rent, because the private sector always is talks about money, money, money. It is the, you know, so state has to take responsibility for housing of migrant workers, because most of the cities in India has between 40 to 55% workforce which is from other place. It is a migrant, it's an inter-district migrant, cross interstate migrant, cross country migration. It is a major problem. So then the budget for sanitation, budget for nutrition. Why in sanitation, the one thing is there that why aren't we using technology for sanitation? So many sanitation, the highest number of people who have died getting corona infection are sanitation workers, okay, and among them also women sanitation workers who are directly exposed to infection. So why can't we use technology for sanitation? Why should there be underground sewage cleaning by human being? We are seeing that scene everywhere in each suburb. We see that we should be using robo. It's only a question of political will. If a small state like Kerala can use robo for underground cleaning, sewage cleaning, why can't we do that? So that is the third type of services are regulatory services. Regulatory services, State Commission for Women, National Commission for Women. Women cell within the police station, because when there is a gender-based violence, women find it very, very difficult. Even if you go to the police station, the atmosphere in the police station of so many galis against women's private part and all that, it's a very, very, very scary atmosphere in the police station. The whole uh, atmosphere is so much rife with the toxic patriarchy that women don't even feel like opening up or telling there's whatever tragedy that had happened. So women police station will come, like Maharashtra, 25% of the new recruitments in Maharashtra, they are of women police officers. Okay, that's the provision that is made. And also awareness generation of the program. If we have 40 types of anti-poverty program, if we have so many schemes and programs and provisions and GRs and facilities for women, why don't people know about it? That means we need to create awareness about this through FM radio, through electronic media, through public education programs, through WDC in every enterprise and in every educational institution. So it's very important. Now, going through the history of gender responsive budgeting, it was in Australia where the students' organization, the young women in the students' organization, they demanded gender responsive budgeting from the government. You know that in the rich countries, in the industrialized countries, children are expected to be independent at the age of 15. Once that 15 per day is over, parents say, now you fend for yourself. We have done enough for you. Now, at the age of 15, to be independent is very difficult, okay, for both for boys and girls. But in case of girls, it is even more problem because the people who apparently help them, they only take advantage of them. There were so many incidences of unwed mothers. The women, where would they stay? Like boy would stay even in open, and he would not. But while a woman staying all by herself on the open road, homeless woman, she would be abused. So it is in this context that the youth organization in Australia, they demanded that what was the government spending on women's development. It was a native, and Australian government agreed to give the budgetary allocation and gender, what kind of gender budgeting state was doing. After that, everyone picked up. So many countries picked up. South Africa, which had toppled the apartheid government, Nelson Mandela ji, he became president of South Africa. Women who were very active in fight against apartheid and racism in Africa, in the against the Botha regime, who are active in African National Congress, they demanded from the politicians that what kind of the apartheid regime was not bothered about African women, but you are our brothers. What are you going to do for us? And then the government decided that all the parliamentarians and NGOs should come together to come up with a gender responsive budget. Similarly, in the 90s, we saw Commonwealth Initiative. All the countries which were the colonies of the British Empire, they also started doing gender responsive budgeting. In India, in 2001, University Grants Commission, UGC, asked Women's Studies Center to do the gender budgeting, gender audit. First is the audit, budgeting came much later. So gender audit of the budgets from 1991, new economic policy when India adopted, to 2001. And to what extent it has an empowering or disempowering impact, because you know that after new economic policy came, social sector budget went down. All of them had to follow zero-based budget policy for so far as social sector work. And how did it impact women? And we saw that India also in 2006, the finance ministry asked everyone to do the gender responsive budgeting. Each and every ministry and department had to come up with the gender budget itself. Similarly, we saw several other countries when the European Union, like so many European countries, formed a European Union, and in that 40% reserved seats were kept for women parliamentarians. Okay, and these women parliamentarians also demanded gender responsive budgeting. In India, in 1994, we had a 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. So, with one stroke of pen, we had 1 million women, 10 lakh women who crossed the threshold of domesticity and entered into the public life, that is Panchayati Raj institutions. And these women, once they were in the Panchayati Raj institutions, in the corporate, as corporator or councillor or member of Gram Panchayat or member of Jilla Panchayat, there were expectations. If you are a leader, if you are a public personality, you have to deliver. Just by attending the meeting, you don't get any respect. I remember in 94, the first women generation of women who were elected as a corporators under reserved seat, people were laughing at them. Male corporator were laughing at them. What are you? You are good for nothing. What do you know? You come in nicely decked up in a meeting. You can, at the most, what can you do? You can do flag hoisting on 15th August or 26th January, offer some flowers to the leaders. But do you understand governance? What is budget? Do you understand what is meaning of expenditure budget? What do you know understand meaning of revenue budget? You are Dumbo. And that the women felt very insulted. And they got hold of me. That time I was teaching. I was economics teacher in SNDT. And they said, Vibhuti, will you teach us how to make the budget? Because now every corporator in Mumbai gets 5 crore rupees for area development. And unless we develop our ward, no one will respect us. We have to, what should be the priority? The children are saying we want reading room. Poor children who are living in a basti, they said, at home we can't study, give us a reading room. Elderly women are saying that in Bombay, homes are so small, give us Nana Nani Park. The elderly people are telling us. The people, rich people, they say we have a four-wheeler, we want a pakka makhan jaisa rasta. There are people who are demanding. So different sections of society have a different kinds of demands. The newly emerging suburbs, they are demanding crematoria, they are demanding bank facility, they are demanding municipal school, they are demanding health center. So how should we use our 5 crore for this thing? And there have been experiences that so many times when you don't have idea of how to spend money, then you return your money. and returning money is really bad. Not using money is really bad as a public personality. Unutilized money is a really, because you have to, it is a developmental fund. So it is very important that gender budget initiatives are currently being attempted in 84 countries in the world. So out of 200, the total number of countries in the world are 203, out of which 84 countries are doing gender responsive budgeting. In our country, we have a parliamentary system, we have multi-party system. So it is the elected representatives who are implementing gender budgeting. In state like Bangladesh, country like Bangladesh, where NGOs are powerful, most powerful, they have their colleges and they have their hospitals and they have industry and their production center, everything is with them. So NGOs are the main movers of budget. You have a countries where there is ethnic tension and civil war kind of situation is happening. So the UNHCR, United Nations Human Rights Council, like Afghanistan, when it was under Taliban, it was UNHCR and they complemented budget. When there was a ethnic cleansing in Somalia and Bosnia and all, it was the UN peacekeeping force that they were taught, the army men were taught gender budgeting. So gender responsive budgeting is an exercise no citizen can say that I don't want to learn. Okay, you have to learn. You have to learn because it's a matter of money. And there is that phobia for budget book should go. There is nothing, so it is not a rocket science. Anyone can understand. Okay, that's what and that's what I have been training women elected representatives and this thing right from 94 till now. And every time I go, I get so much of energy. You must have heard the example of Kutumbashri. How did they manage floods in Kerala? How did they manage corona pandemic? The best example in the world, currently people say it is a Kerala model, where the way they use the self-help groups for the detection, isolation, and this thing and vaccination program. Okay, so because and they were so effective. So strategy for gender responsive budgeting, what are we? As a gender expert, as a gender economist, what we try? First is increasing the budgetary allocation. If you have a program for midday meal, increase the budget. Unit cost can't be 12 rupees. Okay, it has to be right to food after the Right to Food Act. We have said that in 12 rupees, what can you give them? You can give them chana, you can give them some sukri. That should not be there. It should be one good hot meal children should get. So increase the budgetary allocation. And ICDS should not give money only to food to only children. Okay, some state government like Tamil Nadu, you know that the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, Mr. MGR, MG Ramachandran, when he was a child, he was very poor, and it was the neighbor. His neighbor would always, anytime he saw him hungry, the neighbor would give him sambar and rice. So in 1964, when he became chief minister, first thing he did was Annadan Bestan. Okay, so Annadan, and he started midday meal scheme, and he used the chief minister's fund to start a midday meal scheme, and that became such a it had such an important impact in dealing with the malnutrition among women, lactating mothers, and elderly people. Because Tamil Nadu midday meal scheme has a convergence. It is for children, it is for lonely elderly, and it is also for uh, pregnant women. So increasing the budgetary allocation, improving the quality of resource input. So it is not only sukri, which we will give. Earlier we used to give sukri, and that sukri was also sponsored by UNICEF. We said no. Once we had a Right to Food Act, we said we had to make a budgetary, very massive budgetary allocation for the uh, for the midday meal scheme, and it should be hot, fresh meal. And Tamil Nadu model was that they asked the community, the food was cooked in the community. Okay, so people could see whether they were doing any corruption. Every people would know, and they would eat. They would also get a community because there are children, there are women, there are elderly people, all those who are suffering, who are excluded. They come together and eat. I have also eaten food in midday meal of Tamil Nadu. It's nice. It's like a homemade food, but yeah, very good food. So, gender training for public servants and greater funding certainty that include how the money should be spent as planned. So then the whole massive training program started for elected representatives to train them to first of all write the proposals and how in a different budget, because now you have to know tally because you have to do the double entry account. No, it's very important in this. Redistribution of budget allocation. Wherever you find that there is a wrong kind of expenditure, you have to curtail them and divert that money for a genuine gender concerns. Changing the type, that means we in Maharashtra, what did we do? That no sukada, because sukada was made in Waghale estate in Thane, and then in a van they used to take it to all over. Maharashtra is a very big state, and by the time it reached some Chandrapur forest in Chandrapur, that sukada would have worms in it, and it would be completely this. There's so many people, they got infection and all. So we said nothing doing, decentralize. So there was a redistribution, the same allocation, but there was a redesigning that it should be decentralized cooking, that it should happen in the community. And also, like any midday meal food, you have to test. Okay, the teacher, the first the teacher eats, then the student eats, so that to avoid any kind of a food poisoning that is there. So even when we are running a midday meal scheme in our early childhood center, we trustees, we first eat. Okay, we have to eat first. Someone has to eat from the responsible person, and after that, you half an hour children can eat, so that they are safe. So changing the type and quality of goods and services delivered by the government, that's very important. Like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we have seen that everything is given, okay? Uniform, because that's what the probe report wrote. Probe report says that what we need, don't treat education infrastructure, don't treat non-plan grant as a burden. We need non-plan grant, okay? Just by creating a swanky building, school building is not enough. You have to run that building, you have to do repair and maintenance, you have to provide beautiful playground for the children. Just because it's a government school, why should it have a dilapidated structure? So our attitude to government schools and municipal schools also changed after Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, where children are getting not only uh, classroom, but they also get uniform, and they get shoes, and they get midday meal. And now we are also talking of quality education. National education policy also talk about improving the quality of education. And the Asar report, like today in Indian Express, the director of Pratham has written a very beautiful article about how quality of education, Asar annual survey of education performance, how can we improve that? Because resources are being spent, only the students' ability to read, write, and understand the abstract subjects like mathematics and science and English and all, that is a need of an hour. And changing the policy outcome, whatever policies you have, these are the outcomes. If you find that the outcomes are negative, then you change them. So this thing. So if you see this whole flow chart, you can see that it was a global call for gender equality, came way back in 1975. In our country, Towards Equality report was presented in Parliament of India in 1974. 1975 was declared as International Women's Year, and 1 year was not enough to deal with gender issues. So 1985, 75 to 85, it was declared as an International Women's Decade. At the end of the decade, the forward-looking strategy, Nairobi forward-looking strategy came out. So globally, an atmosphere was created for gender equality. It also percolated down to the local initiatives, and so many people, so many countries, they started gender responsive budgeting within 10 years of time. Like you can see 84 in Australia, and within another 10 years in most of the countries, 84 countries, it started. And then the important thing was gender sensitive training for the implementation authorities. Another thing was livelihood and support services, because so many people in the marginalized sector, they needed livelihood and support services, and also assistance to victims of violence. This is the same time where we see increasing intensity and forms of violence against women, because women for 5,000 years who had accepted their subordinate status, they were coming out, they were excelling in education, they were entering different fields of the economy, and it also, they faced backlash of violence. Okay, so it was not a question of uplifting these women were asking for their rights, and whenever you ask for their rights, you also face, you have to pay the price. So in integrating violence against women and gender-based violence in the development discourse is very important. If a woman asks for a property right, she is dubbed as a witch. Currently, in 16 states of India, so many women are getting killed as a witch. Why? If you go into the detail of each and every story, you would know it. There is a property matter. They want to take away her land. They want to take away her house. Why? Only women without children, or women who are unmarried, or women who are widow or elderly, they are targeted as a witch. Okay, it is the vested interest. So it is a very cruel form of violence. Dowry is another cruel form of violence. Not allowing daughter to be born is a violence. So violence has to be taken up very importantly. The World Bank says that 21st century, the major hazard of the 21st century is gender-based violence. So you can't consider, when you talk about economic development, you have to address violence against women. And when you do this, what you get as an end result is gender empowerment, also social capacity building, and greater participation of people, because gender responsive budget is a participatory process. You sit with the people, you try to understand what are their problems, you take these problems and issues to the elected representatives and authorities, and based on that you prepare a budget. So if you see the history of India, like it was the Towards Equality report which gave a shock therapy that India, don't think that just because we have so many goddesses, Lakshmi and Durga and Kali and Bauchara and all, Indian women have a very good status. No, there was a declining sex ratio. There was a work participation of women was going down, and very high maternal mortality of women, which cannot be explained only by poverty. There is something in the culture also. Gender norms are such that women are facing this. So what we need is that you can't leave everything to the market. Market is not an equalizer. Market is also social constructive, and state needs to intervene. We need to have affirmative action to compensate for the historical injustices that women have faced over last 5,000 years. And now even the transgender community has been saying the same, that we have been neglected. We are not given level playing field. Nobody is making, our family is not making any investment in us. Our society is not doing, they are only stigmatizing us. So now the state has to take a proactive effort. As a result of this parliamentary debate, we got a 6 5-year plan which started a separate chapter. Women were brought out from the welfare rubric to the development rubric, that women are doing so much of unpaid work for the economy that they are agent of development. In 1988, when Ela Bhatt of Seva, she became a Rajya Sabha member, though she used her 5 years to come up with a mammoth report called Shama Shakti Report 1988, which gave the idea of women's contribution in all sectors of the economy, 96% of them in the organized sector, 94% in the unorganized sector, what kind of contribution that Indian women were making and what state needed to do to give them better quality of life. National Perspective Plan for Women also came out in 1988. As a result, what we saw was that 8 5-year plan, we had declared that in every anti-poverty program, any developmental program, there should be special program on women to complement the general development program. So general development program for all, but at the same time, special targeting for women. 9th 5-year plan talked about women's component. The way you have a scheduled caste component, 30% of the budget goes to of every ministry is targeted to scheduled caste. You have a tribal subplan. The tribal subplan, you have a scheduled caste plan. Similarly, 30% of this development budget should benefit the women. That was the formula which 9th 5-year plan gave. And the 10th, 11th, and 12th 5-year plan also said that gender responsive budgeting and women component plan, they should converge. So what we see is that this analysis can help women to, and everybody, like elected representatives, governance structures, administrators, to come up with the budgetary allocation, financial allocation, allocation of funds, functions, and functionaries to deal with the historical injustice and build the society, build the economy on the foundation of gender equality. Now, our society sees man as a breadwinner and woman as a dependent. But you can see that how much burden is shouldered by women. Okay, historical burden of low literacy, low wages, unpaid care work, high mortality rate, and gender-based violence. Now, with so much of a burden, we need state to ease that burden through gender budgeting. So there are 5 critical areas in which gender budgeting uh, has to be implemented. One is economic participation. Why do we have only 24% work participation rate of able-bodied women in the age group of 15 to 59. Why economic opportunities? Why only limited economic opportunities are there? Why do we have 92% of women in informal sector doing monotonous menial job, dead-end job? There is no possibility of upward mobility. Political empowerment. Why do we have only 11% women in Indian Parliament? Why do we have some 7 to 12%? Orissa is the only state which has declared 33% reservation for women in assembly. Punjab has promised, Orissa already did it. But elsewhere, we don't see this kind of a political empowerment. Educational attainment. But why do women drop out? All of us, we are saying that's because of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, 100% enrollment takes place in the first standard. But why? By the time they reach 12th standard, 75% of the girls are out of school. Only 25% are able to reach the college. So educational attainment also is limited. There is a big gender gap. And health and well-being also, we have a very high level of morbidity and mortality among women in all age group. And also women not being allowed to be born with this whole sex selective abortions. So historical neglect and also institutional hegemony, toxic patriarchy, which would not, which creates the gap between formal equality, which is enshrined in our constitution, Article 14, 15, 16, and the substantive equality, where equality in education, equality in employment, equality in political participation, equality in the decision making in the community, that's not happening. So, and among the most marginalized who are Dalit, tribal, disabled, Muslim, HIV positive women, they face even more social stigma and aversion. So, gender responsive budgeting exercise is it that you understand the actual schemes, allotment, you scan the budget with the gender sensitivity, you demystify all the minor head and major head and subhead and all. There is nothing, it's not a rocket science. Anyone can understand. If I can understand, anyone can understand. So that is to be that whole myth about budget is a very complex thing that has to go. Politicians can't say that. We don't, looking at the fat budget book only, so many of them, like when I went to the assembly to listen to the budget, most of them had left there. They all were given briefcase. So many of them took the briefcase and kept the budget book outside in the Vidhan Sabha only. They said, oh, it's so heavy, we won't be even able to read it. No? So that is the kind of temperament. You can't have it. You have to study. And the MLA who had given me facility to enter the Vidhan Sabha to observe how the budget session was going on, he gave his copy to me and that I used for press conference. Women Empowerment Policy 2001 also talked about the fully empower women politically, educationally, economically, and legally. So I think that promise of Women Empowerment Policy, now we have a revised policy of 2016, but still it is a draft. There are several roundtables have taken place. So this whole GRB exercise, if you put it in terms of figure, you can say that our ultimate goal is a gender equality. But how do we start? We begin with step one is poverty alleviation. It's very important. When you are hungry, when you are famished, you can't achieve anything, development goals. So poverty alleviation, number one. Good governance, very important. You have to be motivated. You have to be honest. You should not use public funds for personal selfish interest. Accountability, you are accountable. Whatever promises you have made in terms of budget, you have to show in terms of performance. There is to be transparency. You know that Right to Information Act, how Mazdoor Kisan Sangram Samiti Aruna Roy, who is responsible for when in Rajasthan, all the budget like 3 crore rupees, 5 crore rupees, which different sarpanch they were getting the proposal and for irrigation, for digging of well, for digging of pond, providing fodder for the animals. All these things they were getting money, but money never reached there. What did Aruna Roy do? She went with a DG cap and she said, she showed that in the village, there is no irrigation, there is no well, there is no patka road, there is no this thing. Only thing, a sarpanch who was staying in a small mud house, now he has a big bungalow and 2 cars. That means the money that was actually uh, allocated for the village development was embezzled by the sarpanch for his personal this thing. And she captured everything. She spoke to the villagers. She's captured everything on her digi camera. She was an ex-IAS officer, so she gave it to the member of parliament, and they said, you show this film in the parliament. And in the Parliament of India, it was shown that this is what is happening. At that time, the Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had also said that any development fund in India, like 15 paise reaches there. Out of 1 rupee, 85 paise is eaten up, 15 paise is reaching. Only while in southern states, 4 southern states, he talked about Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. He says there, if you allocate 1 rupee, 85 paise is reaching there, while 15 paise is leakage is there. Okay, so that is the level of corruption we have. And currently, you must have known that day before yesterday, Madam Deshpande, she got a prize, international award for exposing the corrupt practices, as a human rights defender. So accountability and transparency are very important. Economic efficiency is also very important. That money which is allocated is a public fund, public money. It has to bring out the efficiently result. If you have invested in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, the performance appraisal, states after states have shown that how Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan money has been used very efficiently in so many places. Like we have seen that even the local initiative, the people also, they contribute. I went to one village uh, in a place where it's a tip of Karnataka. This side is Maharashtra, this side is Andhra. And the people in the village, they speak Telugu, Marathi, and Kannada. And that village did not have, it's a deep forest. They did not have any school. So the women from the panchayat, they took this thing that, look, we have only 1.5 lakh rupees, which can buy only cement and brick. And they appealed to the villagers, and these women, the elected representatives, were really honest. They never use public money. For even cup of tea they would not take from the panchayat fund, no. So they requested the villagers that, look, in our village we have carpenter, we have plumber, we have fitter, we have turner, we have make machinist. Can you give shramdan? Okay, just give shramdan 2 days a week. Village, and we will build the school. Panchayat is ready to give you land. We will use panchayat fund only for buying material, and labor should be free of charge. Can you do that? And villagers did that. So wherever you see the leaders are honest, social workers are honest, people are ready to contribute. So economic efficiency also increased. And they said, why every year we are losing 1 or 2 child is eaten up by tiger, or child is dying of snake bite because they had to walk through the jungle to reach the high school. Instead, why can't we have school in our own village? So this is what they proposed. And they said, your children are only going to benefit. Children of our village are going to benefit. Why can't we do it? So it's a very important. So that's why even when you go for a panchayat, sarpanch training and all, I have met so many sarpanch who could not earlier use even 10,000 rupees immediately in 90s I'm talking of. Even there, even if they did not know, they had never spent so much of money, at a village level. They would have a poultry farm, poultry development for 5,000 rupees, 8,000 rupees for sericulture, but big funding they had not. But after this kind of a training, we have seen them executing projects even worth 3 crore rupees, of a big irrigation project, big flyover, the bridge, creation of a bridge, creation of pakka roads with PWD fund, creating the big the toilet blocks within the school, because so many schools have a dry this thing. And major reason for dropout of a girl after 5th standard is mainly because there are no toilets, and because now the girls are menstruating at the age of 10, 11, 12. So it's very important. So once you increase the people's participation is there, transparency and accountability is there, you attain economic efficiency and also equity. Equity is creating an ecosystem which is conducive to equality. Okay, if like there is a organization in Mandesh Mahila Sarkari Mandli, you must have heard, she got the best entrepreneur award, Chetna Gala Sinha. Okay, when she went there, she was passed out from Bombay University. After marriage, she went there, and she saw that none of the girls in the school, none of the children in the school were going to college, to school. There was a total illiteracy in the village. The village got, that whole Mandesh area got rainwater only once in 3 years. This was drought-prone area of Maharashtra. Rampant alcoholism and domestic violence was there. The women, and when she went there, the women of the village, they said that, no, you are an educated city girl. Why don't you do something for us? We don't want to become millionaires, but we want to lead a self-respecting, dignified life, and we want future for our children. And that's how Mandesh Mahila Sarkari Mandli became, came into existence. And women started making small savings, whatever savings they little had. Along with the capacity building, they also they said that children are not going to school whole day, they are playing or gambling or this. So they said, why aren't they going to school? They said, because we don't have pakka road now, we don't have no bus, state bus comes to our village, and we won't send our children crossing the forest and all. Then she said, okay, there are small roads are there, can we start cycle scheme? And they started cycle scheme. And they told the girls, all the children of the village, not to travel alone. Don't go alone in this whole, all the children of village should gather at one place, and in a group they should go to the school. Okay. And they trained them also of self-defense and all that. And that scheme worked so well. And when the case study of Mandesh Mahila Sarkari Mandli was done, and it was there, UNDP did it, and they said this is the best practice. If a small little NGO can do this, why can't the state? And that's how the Bihar government was the first one to introduce cycle scheme. And now you need, so many state governments have started cycle scheme along with the capacity building. Now, any kind of a policy, if you want to translate them into schemes and programs, you need to have a you need to contact elected representatives, motivated civil servants, IAS officers, and administrators, and also consistent monitoring by the women's bodies or a gender budget cells within the ministry and department. That is very important. So gender responsive budgeting, at one hand, is a community. Community has its needs and demands and prospect. Children want playground. Elderly people want nana nani park. Women want a place to have a workshop or SHG. Okay, the men want a place. They want job. They want enterprise. Okay, vendors would want place to sell their stuff. So all these voices of the needs you collect and take it to the government. So acting as a bridge between government and the community, it's a two-way communication. Government also communicates with the community, and that is how we arrive at the uh, genuine need of the people. And we have also seen that wherever the budgetary allocation for women's programs has been very powerful and very judicious, we have seen empowerment. We have seen SHG movement, microfinance movement. Okay, the it has brought the population from starvation to subsistence. Okay, that's a major achievement there, because we haven't seen, even after so many economically volatile changes that have taken place in last 30 years, we haven't come across mass starvation deaths and all. Okay, it was a SHG movement which saved them, that we gave them at least subsistence. Do roti to mil jayegi kind. Wherever we have seen budgetary cuts, it has reduced the opportunities for women. Basically, the higher education. Higher education, we are spending less than 1% of GDP on higher education. So you leave it open only to private sector, which is charging bomb. So NAC report also says that there is a ghettoization of girls in arts and commerce. When it comes to professional courses, parents are not investing in daughters. Okay, so that is why that's a major this thing. So that means, and when this was told to Ministry of Science and Technology, that why aren't Indian women entering the STEM subjects? And this, so first of all, there is a overall, even the apathy. You always make girls to play with the doll, no, and man with the technology. So many schools, it is compulsory. My school, it was compulsory for a girls to go for tailoring and boys to go for a technical training. So that can also be the reason. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So that overall lethargy is also there, and the overall allocation, like the support scholarships and fellowships for women in science, is not there. And only when the attention was invited that you need a special program for women to pursue their specialization in science, then the Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science and Technology came up with a special scheme called Disha. And you saw that even for the Mars project, how Indian women scientists perform so well. So it is very important. And this was told way back in 2004, and now it has brought result in 2021. So it's very important. Structural adjustment program, globalization, they have also increased women's unpaid work burden because inflation. Whenever you have a price rise, when you have devaluation of your rupee, whenever there is a erosion of ration system or a public distribution system, agrarian crisis, male unemployment, all of them place tremendous hardship on women and their unpaid work increasing. So if we see the history of planning in India, it is always your insight, your sensitivity, your understanding of gender plays a very important role in what kind of budgetary allocation that you will have. It was in 1950 that India had a first 5-year plan. India had faced partition. There were so many women who were in the refugee camps. Their family members refused to even accept their Hindu, Sikh, Muslim women because they were raped. And those was the time. Stigma against rape was so high. And it was the women who were managing the refugee camps, three women, Kamalaben Patel, Pushpaben Mehta, and Ansuya Sarabhai. Mrudula Sarabhai. They told the Prime Minister that these women are abandoned by their family. It is the duty of the country, duty of the state to look after them. And they demanded government should start Central Social Welfare Board. And 1953, it was instituted with 4 crore rupees of grant for rehabilitation of refugees. Okay, this and now we know the Central Social Welfare Board is so important for the every SC, ST, OBC, all of them who are from an economically weaker section. Second 5-year plan, because India was the first country to have adopted family planning policy. Family planning is different from birth control. Birth control is a couple decides, okay, whether you are husband and wife or couple, a lover. They decide whether to have children or not, how many children to have, at what interval. But when this family planning becomes a state policy, India, in the first 5-year plan, they had projected Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as a role model for Indian man to have a small family. Nirodh was used as a technique, which completely failed. Children used Nirodh as a balloon. Nobody used the condom. Indian men did not use condoms. So second 5-year plan decided to have a 30,000 Mahila Mandal. So budget was provided and tell women that if you have small family, you can do so many other things in life, no, instead of getting burdened with so many children. Third 5-year plan, and they had given the barrier method of female condom called diaphragm, which also did not work because Indian women are not to touch your vagina, to touch your yoni is considered to be dirty. Okay, so Shichiganda, it did not work. Third 5-year plan adopted a more invasive technique of a doctor-controlled contraception. That means a intrauterine device and vasectomy and tubectomy for women, vasectomy for men. Fifth 5-year plan, we had extremely horrible experience of population control program during 18 months of emergency, which created tremendous political crisis. That it also coincided with presentation of towards equality report in the parliament, and also shifting of looking at gender concerns from welfare. Women were brought from welfare rubric to development rubric. And sixth 5-year plan onwards, we saw that there was a separate economic agenda for women, separate chapter in this thing, where the health, education, and development was also indicators of development which were adopted were health, education, and employment. So development not only just not as a mechanization and rationalization and more bridge and more railways and more rail mobility and more economic growth, but the human development was the agenda. Seventh 5-year plan adopted the integration of women into mainstream because of, as I told you, and decade. That was the strategy. Eighth 5-year plan coincided with constitutional amendment 73rd and 74th, 33% reservation for women in the local self-government bodies, and we shifted from development to empowerment. So it's not only education, health, and employment, but also decision-making power in politics, in governments, in family, in community. 10th 5-year plan, India adopted women empowerment policy, and also adopted that 30% of the funds and benefits would go in the development sector would be specially targeted to women. 10th, 11th, and 12th five-year plan demanded by this time 54 ministries and departments of our country started doing gender responsive budgeting. Gender budget cells were created, and currently 18 states in our country are doing gender responsive budgeting. And the outlay, which was in 1950, was 4 crore rupees. This year's budget, if you see, it's a 75,000 crore rupees. So, my important thing is your insight and your sensitivity. Before 2006, all the gender economists, they did the post-mortem of the budget. But after that, we see that in a pre-budget workshops also, gender economists are invited. For example, Government of Maharashtra, they would ask the State Commission for Women, where they would invite gender economists like us, they would invite IS officers, they would invite elected representatives who are taking interest. And currently, if you know that in a municipal corporation of Mumbai, under COVID virus, the corporate, she gave a 3.5 hour speech in the meeting, okay, on gender budgeting, that why Bombay needs to be gender friendly. When you talk about the smart city, it has to be gender friendly city. This was the same municipal corporation in 1994. They were laughing at women corporators that you are just nothing, you are decorative piece, अच्छी अच्छी साड़ी में आ जाते हो और कुछ समझता तो है नहीं, you don't understand. And now the women have become so strong and powerful, and in that they are developing their constituency. So gender budgeting involves the review of public expenditure profile, conducting beneficiary incidence analysis, recommending changes in the operational guidelines, as I told you about the Swadhar scheme operational guideline, Balika Samriddhi Yojana, because there they had not told that how will the money parked in the ministry would reach Balikas of our country. Okay, so you need to tell that, and through which channel, which scheme it will reach that. Ensuring women's active participation in all three stages is very important. There are, anytime you see any budget, budget of your school, budget of your college, budget of your community, budget of your housing society, everywhere you have to see this four. Are there any schemes which are 100% for women and children? Are there pro-women schemes like in your building society? Have you talked about the Nana Rani Park? Have you talked about a playground for women? Have you talked about like say community meeting hall or elderly friendly lift or elderly friendly measures, ramp for people with disability? Do you have any kind of a provision? So pro women, then second one is a pro women scheme where 30% of allocation and benefits are for women. Gender neutral schemes like MG Narega, which everybody, if you have a park, everyone will go. If you have a uh, electrification, proper electrification, it will create safety for each and every one. So these are gender neutral schemes, some basic civil amenities which you provide. And fourth one is a residual scheme. For example, we had floods in Mumbai in 2005. So all after that experience of floods, we would always keep some money, residual money for floods. Let's suppose in the next year also flood comes, we must have disaster management fund. But next year there is no floods. So what do you do with that money? If you are sensitive, if you make timely intervention, if you are able to convince your corporators and administrators, you can use that money for gender concerns. So many states in South, where after experience of tsunami, started keeping fund for this kind of a disaster. Okay, but after tsunami, like 1 year they had tsunami. After that, such kind of a major devastation did not take place. So that money can be used for any kind of gender concerns. There are some very important, very big flagship program with crores and crores, like thousands of crores of rupees allocated in the Awas Yojana, Rashtriya Gram Swaj Yojana, scholarships for minority, MG Narega. Now, these are the schemes. In that also, we need to have a beneficiary analysis. Who benefits from these schemes and how many men and women and transgender people they benefited. Currently, also, there are certain gray areas about which gender economists are still working. For example, widow's pension. Is it is it wise to give only cash to widow? Widow is the most powerless person in the community and family. Just leaving cash with her, that's the only thing that you can do. That can be taken away by any relative or any bully. best thing is to make investment in, create a community center, training center, making them economically self-sufficient, uh, creating a place where they can talk to each other about their problem, because isolation is the social isolation is a major problem which widows face. No? So that is that designing, redesigning of widows pension, widow scheme, women friendly transport, except for four or five in cities in our country, Bombay, Chennai, Kolkata, Delhi to some extent. We don't even have a very efficient, safe public transport. Most of the time, in most other cities, they have to they have to depend on the private transport. So I think the state needs to provide the, because once the transport is efficient and safe, work participation of women, mobility of women and girls, and senior citizens would increase. Housing for women, 10% of the houses should be allocated to women-headed households. Women-headed households are one where the main economic responsibility is on widow, separated, deserted, divorced, and women who face long-term migration. All these schemes also apply to transgender community because they are the also ones who are completely socially excluded. Women Component Plan, the major flagship programs in education, water, health, sanitation, public toilet, housing, insurance, skill development mission. Why? What is the beneficiary analysis? How many of women and transgender community they have benefited? Underpayment of women workers in an NRHM. We all applaud ASHA workers. We all applaud Anganwadi workers. They were the heroines during the Corona pandemic. They helped pregnant women in labor to deliver babies, and they worked under tremendous hardship. They went to door to detect Corona and to take the temperature. To even in the vaccination program, they are at the forefront. So many of them are working 12 to 16 hours a day, but still they are not called worker. They are given honorarium. They are not even given wages. So that is one unresolved issue. Absence of women-friendly approach in all these skill missions, because women have not benefited from these skill programs. These things. So that is because there is a strong bias against women that technology is a male domain, and most of the like culturally also we always think that all the technology is it's a phallocentric approach that women were even traditionally not allowed to use the wheel in a potter's house or to use plow in the field, okay, because now the current farmer struggle has shown that women can do anything. They are running tractors and they are doing so. Gender norms are also coming in a way. Financial support to women entrepreneurs. We have only 9% of entrepreneurs in our country are women, and their investment is also 50,000, 1 lakh rupees, and which is mainly borrowed from their family members or selling of their gold or borrowed from friend. Banks don't even consider them as credit worthy. Okay, so there is a tremendous bias among the financial institutions against giving loan to women. Though most of the studies have shown that returning rate of women when they borrow money is 95 to 97%. They are not the person like Nirav Modi who would run away after taking crores of rupees. Okay, they are known for a very judicious in returning the money. But still, we see such a strong male bias. Supportive scheme for transgender population have now become organized. There are two states in India which are already having comprehensive plan. Tamil Nadu was the first one. Kerala has also completed census of transgender people. The need assessment is being done, and their support by the state in terms of their housing, because they are abandoned by their own biological family because of social stigma, their education, their elderly transgender people, pension for them, and also employment program. So that are very important. We also see that in last one decade, because of the efforts of gender economists and the gender responsive efforts by the state governments and elected representatives, we have been able to get the conditional maternity benefit scheme, because India has a very, very high maternal mortality rate. There were states with 480 pregnant women dying out of 10,000 pregnant women, which is a very high, because Kerala has only 12 women die. So, and these deaths can be avoided, okay, by timely intervention. Even if you just have a one pakka road between village and a civil hospital, that woman in labor can be immediately taken to the hospital, and she can have cesarean section, okay. So conditional maternity benefit scheme became a very important, where women can choose where to deliver baby, and the government would directly do the cash transfer. It is called conditional cash transfer, which is wherever this scheme has worked efficiently without any corruption, either by the medical lobby or by the bureaucrats, uh, mortality rate has gone down. So that is very important. National Mission for Empowerment of Women, which was created 10 years back, it is in a mission mode. You make intervention. Schemes for leadership development of minority women, because Ministry of Minorities, Sachar Committee talked about minority, and we have got minorities were socio-economic cultural backwardness to address that, and making developmental investment. But initially years said nothing for women, but after the gender responsive audit, they started this Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme, very important, to uh, incentivize girl child to do public education and to stop uh, adverse sex ratio. That was started. Crash scheme for working parents, very important. Major change. It is not only for women, it is for a parent. If a father also has a child, that can crash facilities can be used. Not many states are even sending proposal to start crash, and I think they should start. The rehabilitation of trafficked women and girls, that is very important initiative with the social work institutions. They said that these girls don't want to go back to their parents. They don't want, they think that the parents will again sell them. Okay, that was the experiment which Bombay had, like Operation Help. Bombay Police, women's organizations, and social work institution worked together in 1995 to disband Kamatipura, which is one of the largest red light area in the Bombay city. And when these girls were brought to the court in front of a judge, the girls started crying and they said, "We don't want to go back to our parents." And that the dilemma was that what would you do if the girls refused to go? They said, "No, this man is not my uncle. He's a pimp. He will again sell me." And that was the time government of Maharashtra decided that they contacted 13 shelter homes in Bombay city. They contacted 40 colleges and schools in Bombay, principals in the Bombay city, and they said, "You will make it confidential. No one should know that these girls are from Kamatipura. Give them education, give them." So first the open school model was used. So many of us were involved in a one-to-one teaching, because these girls had a very, very painful past as a child. It's not easy to be child prostitute. Okay, you must have seen a movie Partani. You know what all these girls had gone through. Okay, so a lot of psychological investment, one-to-one investment, and that kind of this thing experiment, which was also documented by Participatory Action Research, College of Social Work. In fact, the book written by uh, College of Social Work's research unit for the frontline workers. And the three governments had to work together: government of Nepal, government of India, government of Bangladesh, because the trafficking was happening among SAARC countries. After this experience, the new scheme came up, and that was called Rehabilitation of Trafficked Women and Girls. In fact, Delhi has a separate bureau only to deal with traffic, because they have a major problem of trafficking of girls from Jharkhand. And this trafficking is for many various things. It's not only for prostitution, trafficking for child labor, trafficking for forced labor, trafficking for organ, because kidney and this thing, there's a big this thing, trafficking for surrogacy, for hiring a womb of a person, or for ovulation, taking a ova of a young woman. So it's a very big area where the whole systematic mafia is operating. Nirbhaya Fund for Girls and Women Survivors is 1,000 crore rupees right from 2013. That the major lacuna is that unutilized fund. So I think creating more awareness and more political will among the bureaucrats and among the politicians about utilization of Nirbhaya Fund is very important. It's not just by installing CCTV camera, you can't solve the problem of violence against women. Okay, so gender-based violence is far more complex issue, and you need to address it in a multi-pronged way. And need for women's centrality in all sectors, whether it is the industrial sector, agrarian sector, tribal sector, service sector, IT sector, every that is very important. And we as gender economists, we demanded separate listing for women specific budget. Same thing, senior citizens are asking for a senior citizen specific item. Child rights organization are asking for child specific budget. the transgender community is asking for transgender communities budget. So now every section is becoming conscious of budget. Earlier there was a time, like when I was a child, there used to be only industrialists and chartered accountants who were interested in budget, and there would be a big lecture at a Brabant stadium and all people in suited booted would go to listen to them. That's not the case now. The awareness about it is public fund, it is a taxpayers money, and it has to be used for area development for community. That kind of awareness has come. No diversion of women component fund, that even if the fund is unutilized, you can't divert it for any other purpose, just for interior decoration of a mantralaya, or you can't use it for buying some vehicles. And Ministry of Defense is always ready to take the diverted fund, but that should not be. It should be carried forward for the next year. Transparency about allocation and utilization of funding. Okay, very important. Right to information. Every citizen has a right to know. Like in Goregaon, in Bombay, one person, one MP has shown uh, utilization of 2 lakhs rupees for one bus stop. Now that bus stop had nothing; it had just tin and 4 poles. So the students of Goregaon, they asked for RTI. That how did you spend 2 lakh rupees? That bus stop has no facilities, nothing else. So that way we see that so many ordinary citizens are also using RTI. Inclusion of gender economists in the pre-budget workshop. Most of the governments, like government of Orissa, government of Maharashtra, government of Gujarat, they are inviting gender economists in the pre-budget discussions and workshops, because by October budget is ready, then it goes for translation, printing, and by February it is presented. So there is a need for provision in all composite program for women and girls, and now other sections are also demanding the composite program. And restriction for reappropriation. Whatever is been allocated, it should be used only for that purpose. So we need to engender budget at a panchayat level, at a municipal level, at a scheme wise, sector wise, category wise, year wise, both what is the estimate budget, whether they are your revised estimate. If you don't use money between February and October, your money, as in your college, you must be doing the same thing, that you revise the budget, and wherever there is a non-utilization, you divert that fund. And what is the actual expenditure? So that's a very, that's how you can track whether the people in implementation agencies are working or not. Even to use money, you have to work hard. Okay. So I think your Professor Neerav Goda must be knowing that you, even to use the money which is given by or allocated by principal, you have to really work hard to organize a webinar like this. So thorough study of economic survey is very important, because always the economic survey and budget go hand in hand. And the state human development report, state policies for women, national human development report are very important. Now, we all have adopted in principle political decentralization, but political decentralization can be effective only when we have financial decentralization. That means panchayat should not be treated as a beggar. Why should they should be always going with a begging bowl to the state government and union government? So strengthening panchayat becomes very important. Even you must have seen under the corona pandemic, wherever the panchayats had power, panchayats were supported by the state government, by the civil society organization. They performed so well, even to combat pandemic. MP fund, we every corporator, every elected representative is given area development fund. MLAs and MPs, all of them have area development fund, and we as citizens also should see whether this fund it remains unutilized or they are utilizing it, because they have to tell the authorities for what, whether they want to use the fund for more schools, libraries, bridges, pakka road, toilet, drain, tube well, community center, crematoria, banks, whatever is the urgent need of the area, that needs to be utilized. State and National Commission for Women, they are also doing budget training, and it is very important tool in the hands of the state for affirmative action, for improving gender relations through reduction in gender gap in development process. It can help to reduce economic inequality, between men and women, between rich and poor. And in our country, if you see, there are so many experiments. Karnataka, one Professor Devaki Jain, economist and bureaucrat from statistical department of government, Alia Bhatt, they created a model for bottom-up budget. You sit with the villagers, you come up with a micro plan, you decide the practical gender needs, you come up with the strategic gender needs, and you come up with a budget. Economists help you to make the budget, which is taken to the district authorities, district commissioner, district majorities, forwards it to the state government, and that is how the people's felt needs and demands are addressed. Rajasthan has experimented green budget. The Mr. Singh, who got waterman of our country, is called Mr. Singh, who got Magsaysay Award. They use the budget to convert desertification into a green belt. So they use it as the major reforestation program. We have a gender budget to this thing. We have a child budget, child rights organizations in Tamil Nadu. They demanded child audit of budget. In Bombay, 40 NGOs of young women community-based workers, they came together and they started Right to Pee campaign. Bombay city has a 2,300 toilets for men in a public places, on the road, at the railway station. But there are, BMC says they have 123 toilets for women, but they are not usable. The audit done by this Right to Pee campaign shows that hardly 12 toilets are usable. Maybe Churchgate, VT, maybe Thane, or this thing. Otherwise, you don't see they are not even functional. There are stones in the toilet. They don't have door. So they started Right to Pee campaign, and they demanded that if the sanitation budget of Bombay Municipal Corporation is 40% of the total budget, Bombay Municipal Corporation's budget is more than that of government of Maharashtra's budget. It is the wealthiest municipal corporation in whole of Asia, and still women don't have toilets. And it is the city where women started working right from 19th century. Nurses and doctors. Bombay is the city with the most in the highest work participation of women in the economy, both formal and informal. Is the basic facility like a toilet, public toilet, clean, safe toilet is not there. Private sector like a Sulabh Sauchalaya and all, they charge 1 rupee from men and 2 rupees from women. Okay, so the Right to Pee campaign, they use the gender budget method to negotiate more public toilets for women. Gender budget cells have been formed in all governance structures, and now the globally we have seen in the post-pandemic period, where it is shown that it has shown that wherever the women were at the helm of affairs, whether it's the health minister of Kerala, school teacher who became a health minister, and how she combated corona, the method that she used, or some of the women leaders of Scandinavian country, prime minister of New Zealand, the way they responded to public health emergency, that has also brought in a new understanding, which says that instead of talking about women in development, integrating women in development, let us talk about women-led development. The sensitivity is very important. Women's perception and sensitivity are very important. So local and global implications of pro-poor, pro-women budgeting, and what kind of alternative scenario which emerges out of this gender responsiveness, and what kind of interlinkages between gender responsive budgeting and women empowerment. That is the exercise UN Women has done in a big way, that has come up with so many case studies. There are videos available with the best practices and how the gender budgeting process gets operationalized. In fact, when we go for any such meeting, we are also taken for an exposure trip, where what was the condition before gender responsive budgeting happened and what is the status now. So serious examination of budget cells calls for a greater transparency at international economics like World Bank and IMF. First, they are saying that there should be more expansion of public economics, and that should be fiscal expansion should take place, looking at the pandemic and the loss of livelihood and loss of job that we have had. So telling World Bank and IMF not to force poor countries and developing countries to slash social sector budget, because who will lose out? It is the poverty groups, marginalized section who would do that. There is a need to provide training and capacity building workshops for decision makers in government structures, in local and global levels, in parliamentarians, and also audiovisual media. And the teachers are playing very important role in taking the understanding of gender responsive budgeting with simple language, with local examples, so that the governance structures and elected representatives become more gender responsive. These are some of the links of the films, 10 minutes films, 8-minute films, 12 minutes films of the best practices in gender responsive budgeting. They are available on YouTube. There are case studies of Brazil, India, Mysore, that Sangama Srimanivas and bottom-up budget model of Mysore, that how Mysore city dealt with high maternal mortality. How did they use the public health budget to reduce the maternal mortality and child mortality? So that example is that by using the bottom-up budget method. Timor-Leste, the example of Timor-Leste, Indonesia, Morocco, Philippines, countries which are poorer than India, how did they change the lives of people and women in particular and the poor people in general by using gender responsive budgeting? And these are some of the articles written by the people who are making the budget, that means National Institute of Public Finance and Policy Making. Some of the and many of these articles are available online, so you can do further reading. I wish if I have been able to generate healthy curiosity to do further reading and follow up this issue of gender responsive budgeting seriously, and wherever you are placed after your studies, you use this knowledge to make the society more equitable. That I think my effort would have brought. I feel that my effort have achieved something. Thank you very much. Hello, sir. Sir, you are
Thank you,
not on.
ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, ma'am,
Yeah.
for such a eye-opening webinar on gender responsive budgeting. We welcome our Vice Principal, Sir, Lion Dr. Nishikant Jha, sir, for vote of thanks. Before vote of thanks, any questions, please post it in the chat box. Any questions?
Books, books.
Darren, please take on the questions.
If any question, there's nothing. No comments are there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there any questions?
No, sir, there are no questions in the chat box.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
no questions. So over to you, Nishi, sir.
Thank you, Nirav. Good evening, my dear student. On behalf of management, principal, and all higher authorities, I, Dr. Nishikanja, came here and listened very carefully ma'am's session, and it was really a wonderful session. I mean, as Nirav sir has rightly stated, even we learn, myself, Manju ma'am is there, Manoj sir will also agree that we also learn first time this word as a gender economist. Okay, so big clap for that to Vibhuti Patel ma'am, who is a gender economist.
Oh my God,
Ma'am,
I feel so humble.
ma'am, it is rightly stated that strength come from struggle. When you learn to see your struggle as an opportunity
Correct.
to become stronger, better, wiser, then only you think your thinking will shift from I can't do this to I must do this.
Yes, very important.
And you are the right example of that, ma'am. Your entire session was, with apt example and case studies from different part of India, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Bihar. I mean,
Orissa.
people cannot go beyond this kind of case studies, and they cannot understand is not possible when you put such kind of apt example, when you put such kind of case studies, when give your own practical examples, how you have consulted your BMC counselors, corporators at the very beginning, women corporators, and your own personal example, pre-independent during all phases of planning 5-year plans. I mean, really today after a long time, I enjoyed learning economics. It remembered my college days of economics, and really it was a very, very wonderful session with international example. And ma'am, आपके लिए और एक चीज मैं बता दूं, as you have stated that in south after tsunami that woman has done not many things. Even we have seen in COVID there are many case studies. In this COVID period, that woman saving has saved many lives,
Many lives.
many families.
Correct.
Okay, so there are many examples. So आपके लिए और सारी महिलाओं के लिए मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा और ऑलवेज कहूंगा कि पहले भी महिलाएं भारी थी और आज भी भारी है, और पहले भी पुरुष आभारी थे और फ्यूचर में आभारी रहेंगे.
Correct.
With this word, ma'am, on behalf of entire Thakur College, we would really love to see you once again as and when we get this opportunity to, taking
Yeah.
learning from you for different spectrum of students. Because today we had only BBA and BCom honor student.
Yeah.
Similarly, if we can have certain session for WDC, for ma'am, we are catering almost 15,000 students. तो
Yeah.
आप सबके लिए इंस्पिरेशनल हो सकते हैं.
हाँ.
And today only we had a meeting of gender audit. So we have already established, and now with your speech, I think the student will also learn what is the importance of gender audit, how we will do the gender audit, how much we are giving benefit to male student, how much benefit is given to the female student. We will again do the audit, how many toilets are there with per se these many female students. So ये सारा चीज अभी practicality में हमारे कॉलेज में apply होने वाला है, and where you can be a guiding force for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this entire session.
And NAC has also made it mandatory.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, gender audit is mandatory.
Yes, ma'am. So on behalf of all, to be precise and particular, Department of BBI, Department of BCom Honors, we are really thankful to you, ma'am, for your gracious presence and valuable input. I know you people are very busy, still you are giving time to our college, to our student. And now we have this entire video. It might be used for other student as well.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for gracing the occasion. And we would look forward such kind of session in future from you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Over to you, Neerav sir.
Participants, please fill up the feedback link so that the certificates can be generated in the next 2 working days for the same. Thank you, Vibhuti ma'am. Thank you once again, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Neerav sir, for opportunity and such an excellent coordination and participation. It shows your teamwork is very, very powerful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren?